Shroud of Turin. In 1988, carbon dating revealed it was a fake. But now, at the end of his life, one scientist claims he's uncovered new evidence that the shroud may be real.
I think I can come very close to proving that it was used to bury the historic Jesus.
On October 8, 1978, in the Italian city of Turin, an unprecedented event took place. The Shroud of Turin, one of the most mysterious objects in the Western world, was finally going to be examined by scientists. For 120 hours, the Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STURP, would run thousands of tests on this sacred 14-foot piece of linen, believed by many to be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ.
We opened up Pandora's box and created a whole new group of questions.
Many worried that what they would find might rock Christianity to its core.
It's like the courtroom drama will say, it's real, and this is Jesus, or it's not, and it's a hoax, and you've all been defrauded, and by implication, religion and faith are a joke.
One of the leading members of the STURP team was Ray Rogers, a highly respected chemist from the Los Alamos National Laboratory. Rogers was a man of science, not God, and yet he was absolutely captivated by the shroud. For him, it was a great mystery waiting to be unraveled.
I don't believe in miracles that defy the laws of nature.
The scientific journey that brought Rogers and dozens of other scientists to the Shroud of Turin began with an amateur photographer, Secondo Pia, who in 1898 took the very first photo of the shroud. A photo that revealed something no one had ever seen.
When Secondo Pia makes this photograph, he almost dropped the plate. It scared him because he said, "My God, I was looking into the face of the Lord."
The image on the shroud was very faint, but Pia's photographic negative brought a face into stark relief. It was the first real evidence there was more to the shroud than the naked eye could see, and it caused an uproar.
He's immediately accused of fraud, immediately accused of cheating, lying, and manipulating this. It's a fake. And it wasn't until 1931 when Giuseppe Henriet is allowed to photograph the shroud for the second time, gets the same results, of course. The world of science suddenly looks at the shroud and says, well, wait a minute, maybe we should look at this closer.
But scientists were not given the opportunity to look more closely at the shroud. Another 40 years would pass before they made another major breakthrough using a new high-tech image analyzer called a VP8. Peter Schumacher was a field engineer for the team that created the VP8, which was originally designed to analyze images from medical resources and satellites.
Nobody in our company had ever even heard of the Shroud of Turin, let alone seen pictures or wanted to look at image analysis of the Shroud of Turin.
What the VP8 analyzer does is plot the light and dark areas of an image onto a 3D grid. In the mid-70s, two American scientists, Eric Jumper and Joe Jackson at the U.S. Air Force Academy, heard about this new technology and asked Schumacher to use it to examine a photograph of the shroud. We asked Schumacher to recreate that test for us so we could see exactly what it was that excited shroud scientists 30 years ago. We placed 3 images under the analyzer: a self-portrait of the great master Leonardo da Vinci, a photograph of one of our crew members, and the 1931 photograph of the Shroud of Turin. First, Schumacher examined the charcoal self-portrait of Leonardo da Vinci to show how the analyzer reacts to a drawing or painting, which some have argued is exactly what the Shroud of Turin is.
If it was painted, it would look like the Da Vinci, which came out basically looking like noise. It's a fairly bland contrast.
Next, we wanted to see what a regular photograph looked like under the VP8, so we tested a picture of one of our crew members.
If we look, Jim's cheeks really aren't that flat. His eyebrows are not really grooved into his forehead. His nose really doesn't smear all over his face.
This is what every photograph looks like under the VP8. It is not rendered with real height or depth, the things that make up a true 3D image. But when a picture of the shroud is placed under the analyzer, something remarkable happens.
All of a sudden, we're seeing contrast that has something to do with height and depth, real distance. The nose has a prominence, the cheeks roll off, the hair has a shape to it and is rounded. The whole image has dimension to it.
Schumacher's results deepened the mystery started by Secundopia. How had this image formed on the shroud?
The shroud is a very unique image, the only one of its kind in the whole world. Nothing else like it. Three-dimensional relief, the front and the back of a whole human being. Only one in the world. No other, nowhere, no how, no way. I don't know any way to make it. I've never heard of a way to make it. Just the Shroud of Turin.
Armed with these results, Jumper and Jackson formed STIRP in 1977 and began the delicate dance of gaining access to the shroud.
The VP8 was the catalyst that caused the formation of the STIRP team. They said, we should see if we can figure out how this image was formed. The biggest problem has always been access to the cloth itself.
In the spring of 1978, despite the resistance of many in the Vatican, the Church said yes.
The Church took a relatively enlightened view about the shroud. They have a lot of folks who believe, in fact, that it is truly the burial shroud of Christ and don't want anybody meddling with it. The other side of the coin is that if we don't let the scientists look at it, we'll never know what the truth is.
Finally, when we were given our permission to examine the cloth, that science, for the first time really in history, could apply the real scientific method, not just photographs.
In order to get access, STIRP could not propose any tests that would mark or cut pieces from the shroud.
All these tests had to be non-destructive. Most of the local folks really didn't like us messing around with this holy object.
The STIRP team was only given 5 days to examine the shroud. They worked literally around the clock to find out how the haunting image got on the cloth. Barry Schwartz was one of the few photojournalists permitted to record the event.
There were spectral analyses done. Sam Bellicore had a spectrophotometer with him that he was using. There were a mosaic of photographs made. It was photographed with ultraviolet fluorescence photography. It was X-rayed using X-ray fluorescence and reflectance imaging.
Ray Rogers' tests found that there were no pigments, no dyes, no binding agents typical of paint of any kind on the main body of the shroud, meaning the shroud could not have been painted or drawn. But the most fascinating revelation of all was the story told by the bloodstains on the shroud. When someone is tortured, as the Bible tells us Jesus was during his crucifixion, red blood cell walls are ruptured, releasing hemoglobin into the body. The hemoglobin is quickly broken down, creating high levels of bilirubin, and the wounds begin to clot. STIRP's analysis showed the stains on the shroud were these blood clot secretions with extraordinarily high levels of bilirubin, exactly consistent with the trauma of crucifixion. Then there was the ultraviolet fluorescence photography that revealed one more incredible clue hidden from the naked eye.
you can visually see these serum stains around the blood stains that were never visible until our team photographed the shroud with UV fluorescence photography approximately 2,000 years after this man ostensibly was killed.
Serum is the liquid component of blood. Composed mostly of water, the stains were invisible on the shroud until ultraviolet light made them appear fluorescent.